Hi everyone, my name is Marin and welcome to my channel. I'm super excited to get into today's video. It's been a long time coming this one, but alas, here we are. I'm super passionate about this topic. Let's just get right into it. I want to start with a brief intro to myself and what moved me to start on this crazy journey of, well, as the title says, buying a house at 21. And then I'm going to get into some specifics of what I did to make this happen for myself. So first of all, I always liked numbers. That doesn't mean that I was this prodigy child that was just doing Sudokus all day. No, definitely not. But as long as I can remember, I'm just interested in the concept of money and what it can do, how people make it. So I remember from a young age, I loved saving my money. As a 10-year-old, you would get €1 allowance per week from your parents, and I would set this aside to save this for bigger purchases. And I distinctly remember my parents telling me, like, Marin, you should spend this money. That's why they gave it to me, but well, I kind of didn't. And my second point kind of goes hand in hand with that trait of saving for later, and that's my passion for independence. Since I was basically old enough to talk, I had my own ideas of how my life should look like. And as a 4-year-old, this meant picking out my own clothes, even if that meant wearing the same dress for a whole week. And now that means building something for myself and creating financial stability for myself. So that's just a brief background of me. But how did this all kind of tie into me buying a house, and how did this crazy idea even come to mind? So for that, we have to go back to my first year of uni, which was in 2018. I was starting uni in a different city than where I grew up in the Netherlands. So I grew up in Leiden and I went to study in Rotterdam. And this was around 1 hour and 20 minutes from door to door by public transport, which meant that I really wanted to find a place to live in Rotterdam. Well, at this point I was 18 years old and my parents were playing with the idea of buying something for me to then live in with other students. But unfortunately for me at the time, I really didn't have any knowledge basically about buying homes. What does even debt and equity mean? How does buying a home even work? Because I knew that one didn't have hundreds and thousands of euros just sitting in their bank account. So I didn't know anything, which I mean, fair. many people don't know this at like 18 years old. So therefore that's what this was, just an idea. Then 2 years later, I was getting more into stocks and the stock markets. For my fellow Dutchies, the aandelenmarkt. I discovered that a very efficient and accessible way of learning lots about the stock market was via YouTube. And I'll get more into the topic of stocks and investing in another video. But when I was looking into different stocks and just broadening my knowledge basically, I ran into this guy on YouTube called Meet Kevin. And he had lots of information and knowledge about stocks, but also on real estate. That's because he started out his career as a licensed real estate agent, aka een makelaar, and he shared lots of information about the benefits of buying a home, how you could buy a home, and of course this was an American guy, so the rules didn't fully apply to me, but the core of what he was saying was still very true and accurate also for me as a Dutch person. And this is kind of where it all started. So at the end of 2020, the ball really got rolling. So from this point, I started diving into the financials of what expenses would be involved in buying and maintaining a house. But of course, I also had to convince my parents, which was a very crucial aspect in all of this, which I'll come back to later, because I could have the craziest aspirations, but without my parents, this whole plan just kind of would feel miserably. But I started making overviews of all my expenses for the month. So groceries, phone bills, clothes, basically any expense that I could think of. And then I would get to the financing part. So what is my income? What will be the income of renters that would come live with me, which I'll also get into later on. And I did various calculations of basically how much I could afford to loan each month. Basically, how big could my loan be so that I would be able to finance it each month. So from there, I kind of had my budgets like, okay, this is how much I could spend on my home. And I presented this case to them and they agreed to the plan and thought it was a good idea. And from this point on, I started actively looking at houses. Lots and lots of houses. So if you're Dutch, you'll probably know Funda, which is basically the Dutch equivalent of Zillow. And I started looking at houses in Rotterdam specifically, of course, because that's where I was studying at the time, or still am studying. And there were a few points in particular that were very important to me. I think my highest priority was that the house was located close to Central Station, because at this point I was already in the final stages of my university degree. I had my bachelor and I was starting my master's, and I had literally no clue where I would end up after my uni. And just being close to Rotterdam Central Station meant that I could basically reach all the large Dutch cities within a relatively short time span, which was So my second point was that it was a 2-bedroom apartment, or at least a possibility to create 2 bedrooms, because one of the financial incentives of buying a home is that, you have people living with you who can pay, part of your monthly expenses. So that of course meant that there had to be 2 bedrooms. My third point, which I learned along the way, and if there's anything that you take away from this video, I hope it's this point, that when looking at houses, you need to keep in mind that 90% of home buyers are just your average Joe who wants to, live in the place for quite some years and then maybe at some point move somewhere else. But these people want a home that's nice, that looks nice, that feels nice, that has a good atmosphere. But that's exactly the homes you do not want to buy. So you want the homes that have the dark carpets, the relatively old feel and look. And of course you need to have a house that's not like falling apart, but some more surface level stuff such as rugs, ugly wallpaper is kind of what you need to see past, because that's where you can add the most value. It kind of ties into my last point, which is assessing your capabilities, because depending on how handy you are yourself or the people in your community that you can have access to and who can help you, that depends on how big the project is that you can take on. As you will see in an upcoming video, I will show you the whole renovation of this place, because that's been quite intense, but I'm kind of getting off track here. But yeah, so my fourth point, assess your capabilities. How much can you do and how much do you need to let other people do? So those were some points that I considered when looking at different houses. And then you'll of course get into the process of actually buying a home, which is relatively straightforward, at least in the Netherlands. Of course, it depends per country, but basically what I did, I got a real estate broker in Rotterdam, and in the end, if I look at what she did for me, I doubt whether she was super, useful basically. I'm not sure if I were to buy another house, if I would again get like a real estate broker for myself. We'll see that when the time's right. Especially when you're just starting out, it's really nice to have someone who has your best interests at heart and, can just take care of stuff for you. And then of course, when you're looking online at houses and you kind of get a feel for, okay, how, because there's of course various criteria that you look at when you're looking at houses, and I definitely want to make another video going into that and stuff that I noticed that you have to pay attention to, and what are things that are important or maybe a little bit less important, but that's all for another video. But when you're looking at houses, the point is to go to actual viewings. I went to various viewings within Rotterdam, and my first viewing was in October 2021, and this apartment the location was amazing, but it was still relatively small. That one didn't end up being the place for me. And then I went to viewing my second one also in October, and that one I actually also placed a bid on, which I didn't get in the end. And as you can also see in these pictures, this was a place that was definitely more kind of quote unquote finished. You basically didn't have to do anything and you could just move in, which looking back is therefore also a reason why this wouldn't have been a great investment. It got like way overbid because it was just nicely looking and it was all done and you could just move in straight away. And then I just continued looking, and I had another viewing of a place that was definitely nice in terms of like square meters. It was a big place. However, also looking back, the location was definitely less ideal than where I'm living right now, and it was also more expensive. So in the end, actually, especially that one, I'm very, very happy that I didn't get that one, because I still had to do lots of renovation for that place, even though it was in a little bit less of a critical state as this place. But yeah, I still had to renovate because it was just very old. And then in December 2021, I had the viewing for this place. And that same month I placed my bid, and in the Netherlands you place your bid and there are no negotiations, it's just the highest one gets the place. So in that same month I also got the call that my bid was accepted, and in that moment it all became very, very real, because of course before I had placed some bids on places, but getting the call that yours is actually the highest was something completely different. I was hit with this mixture of excitement and relief that, finally my bid came through, but also insecurity and fear and just uncertainty, because the realization hit me that I was a 21-year-old who just made a very, very big commitment. But deep down, I knew that this was supposed to happen for me and that this home had so much potential, and that it was mine. Well, almost. After this call, I still got some reflection time, so time you could think over your bid and still cancel it if you wanted to. But, well, surprise, I didn't. So on the 28th of December 2021, I signed my contract, and on the 21st of February, I actually got the keys. And this is where all the fun, blood, sweat and tears and months of crazy renovation started, which will be the topic for the next video. But maybe you are wondering, how the heck did I even finance all of this? And I was a bit torn whether to include this in today's video already, because I've been talking for quite a while, or that I wanted to include this in the renovation video. But I thought I would give you already a quick preview on how I tackled this situation, and I will go into more detail in the next video. So basically how I did it is as follows, because of course to buy a house you need money. Duh. I mean, I did have some saved up, but I was still your quote-unquote normal 21-year-old who didn't have hundreds of thousands of euros sitting in her bank account. And of course there wasn't a bank that would lend me money to buy a home, because at that point I didn't have a full-time job, or I didn't have any experience with a full-time job. So I needed some sort of guarantee that would kind of vouch for me with the bank and, well, basically ensure them that they would get their money. So this is where my parents came in, because they kind of function as this middleman between me and the bank. So I each month just pay my mortgage, what I pay for this house, to my parents, and they then pay it to the bank. So they kind of pose as this guarantee for the bank that they would actually get their money. Because of course, when I can't make my payment, somehow my parents would be able to, you know, make the payment to the bank, which of course I'm not planning on letting happen, but the bank just wants their money. But for now, that's all the detail I want to get into, because I'm already throwing so much information at you. So if you're interested in more of the specifics, I will definitely get into it in another video. So subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for that one. So I want to wrap up this video and leave you with a few pointers that have really stayed with me. And also I wish I would have known if and when I would start my next house project. So my first point is just start looking. Even if you're just thinking of the possibility of buying a house, even if that's literally in a year or maybe even longer, just start looking on, well, if you're Dutch Funda or on Zillow or whatever kind of housing app or website is used in your country. But the sooner you get a feel for the market, how much you can pay with your euro or dollar or whatever, the better. And my second point is do it yourself. As I said, most people who are looking to buy a home want to just live there for the next couple of years. Whether that's applicable to you or not, you know better than to go for the nicely painted living room with the nice furniture, which, you know, will all be gone when you buy it, because that stuff really doesn't matter. Just look for places that have stuff that you can easily replace. Even like a kitchen, it's super easily replaceable. Just get everything out and let IKEA install a new kitchen. And that of course can be a little bit of a hassle, but the value you can add on your home by just not going for the fanciest, nicest places is immense. So really try to keep that in mind. And my third point is ask for help, because people will want to help you. Your family, friends, loved ones, they really want to help you, but you do have to ask them. And I was struggling a bit with this because I really felt like kind of a burden, and I just didn't really want to burden people with my quote unquote issues. It's not issues, it's literally just, you know, doing something for a friend. But just put like some snacks, cokes, beers, whatever, and put on some music and people will definitely want to help out. And my last point is be patient, because a good deal can take a while to find. For me, I would say it happened relatively quickly, from starting actually going to viewings to, well, getting the phone call that my bid was accepted. And I get that you're, you know, especially when you really start to get into it a bit more, you're just eager to get your house, start, you know, renovating, etc, etc. But don't let that kind of take over, and still keep your reasonable mind in place to see, okay, is this really a good deal or do I just want a home? So I think that that's where I want to finish this video. I really hope you enjoyed it and are curious also for the next ones to come, especially relating to the renovation. How much did I spend? What did I do? It was a big project, so it's gonna take quite some time for me to edit that video, but I'm already looking forward to it. And I also want to get into like how much value did I actually add, or how did I do that, but that will all come. So thank you so much for watching. Definitely like this video if you enjoyed it and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next one. Bye guys.